Hey, 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 peace and blessings, everybody. Hope you all are doing well this evening. Welcome to Real Talk with ZSJ. I'm your host, Zakia Sankara Jabbar. And tonight we are just going to have a family discussion with our dear brother, Dr. Cleo Manago. Dr. Cleo, welcome to Real Talk. I'm excited to have you.
Well,
Please share a little bit more about yourself with our audience.
thank you for the invitation, sister. As she mentioned, my name is Cleo, or Dr. Cleo Manago. You want to take the long route. And I am a behavioral health expert, a cultural anthropologist, basically, a behavioral scientist. I'm a writer. And all that long words really mean I'm an activist with different types of tools to affirm and defend Black folks and teach Black people how to love themselves in their own image. That's really my agenda, and how to defend ourselves as well. So I'm sure we'll know more or learn more as time goes on in this discussion, but that's pretty much the bottom line, quick way of putting it.
Absolutely. And I couldn't think of a better person to have this week, right? And I was so honored that you agreed to come and grace the stage, as they say, because you are a mainstay on Roland Martin. That's actually how I was first introduced to you. And for the audience to know, I had an opportunity to visit your institution. You have actually created an institution in Baltimore for Black people to help us heal.
Yes.
And that's what I love your commentary, and I love your approach. And so today, as you know, there's, a lot of things that Black people just globally are navigating. There's a lot of pain, lots of pain. I can certainly say that for myself. And it's been, a lot of intentional self-care for me and different kind of practices and things like that. We continue to see the brunt, right, of state-sanctioned violence that's experienced a lot, but predominantly by Black men. And then, of course, the death of DMX. I'm not sure if you listened to his music, but he was certainly very popular my last few years of high school. And I was drawn to him through his music. And I got an opportunity to learn more about him in his upbringing and childhood and just all the horrific traumas that he experienced. And I felt really a deep connection to him in that way based on my own experience. So I've said a lot. So I would love for you, to kind of jump in. What are your reflections, based on what we see happening with the trial? Black people are tuned in to the trial. I can't do it. That's my self-care. I can't watch it. And then, of course, we learned that another brother was executed in Minnesota in the same community just this Sunday. It's a lot.
Well, all I know about DMX is he's a dude who came up with "Y'all gonna make me lose my mind." Now,
Yeah.
I don't know much more about him. I'm a very I choose my music very, very seriously and very specifically. I'm a former musician myself, so I don't listen to a lot of stuff that you may have heard these days. I'm an old school, Earth, Wind and Fire, Shaka Khan, Aretha Franklin, Temptations, Donny Hathaway. So I'm not. That's where I'm at. Temptations. I was a little bitty baby, but still I remember the Temptations. So DMX, I know about. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind, and that's about it. I'm sure when you share more about his traumas, I'll be familiar with those traumas because a lot of traumas that we go through, a lot of us go through, and I'm quite familiar with trauma. Speaking of trauma, when it comes to the trial of the murderer of George Floyd, I haven't watched. Not only have I not watched, I've never seen the murder. I've never seen video of the murder. I did hear that because I live on planet Earth and it got a lot of exposure, that he did ask for his mother or mention his mother or something like that. And I said, no, I know that we're being murdered. I know what it looks like. I've been there before. I'm going to be here again. I can't do it. And I want to tell you, in terms of the brother that just was murdered, a lot of the murders don't make national headlines. So I want to be real clear to people that like anything else, we hear one or two cases, but they represent a larger number of people that we know nothing about. As a matter of fact, Trayvon Martin came very, very close to being someone we never would have heard about. It was some unusual circumstances that came together, and we finally did hear about this young man who was slept in the morgue for 3 days, though his license was in his pocket, and they didn't contact his parents or anything, and they didn't know where he was. He had been dead for 3 days by the time they finally found out where he was, which is atrocious, almost as atrocious as him being murdered. So I instead am doing the healing work. As you mentioned, I run the Amasi Center for Black Wellness and Culture, and I am perpetually doing things to heal us, to get us awake for real, because a lot of this woke language is just a figure of speech, another fashion statement. It's not really real, because if we were so-called woke, the police would be afraid to kill us.
That's right.
They're not afraid to kill us right now because we're really not woke. We're more like in a trance, which I may or may not get into during our conversation, but Black folks are in a white...
Lean into that. Please lean into that, because that's connected to what I'm talking about. Because for me, I get singled out as somehow abnormal because I just saw a suspected white supremacist, a video of this military man in his neighborhood, you know, putting his hands on and chastising a Black teenager, a Black boy. And I looked at that with so much rage, just as a mother, you know, thinking about my own son. And the young man wasn't doing anything. He just walking. And the wife of the white supremacist, she's a white supremacist too. She told her husband, oh, he's out there. I don't think he belongs in this neighborhood. And there's a whole video of this white man berating, putting his hands on this brother and everything, simply because he was walking in the neighborhood. And so my mind is like, no, we got to avenge that. Not only are the police not scared of us, but regular white folks ain't scared to just run up on us and treat us any kind of way.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, and I'll try to break it down a little bit more, from my perspective, Black people are in a post-white supremacy trauma trance. And post does not mean that the white supremacy phenomena or the white supremacy mythology phenomena is over. It means that we're going into several generations of having been engulfed in a white supremacy cesspool, if you will. Almost everything about us, if we are not thinking, is contaminated by whiteness. The very names some of us have, our first and last names, the media, the school system, systems of what's supposed to be proper and professional, and how people. Just the other day, I spoke to a sister in another state. I almost say her name. I didn't say her name. She works in law enforcement. She talked about how she conformed and how much she played into racism and how it didn't bother her. Then I kept having deep conversations with her about her life and about her coping mechanisms, and she realized indeed it was bothering her. But it wasn't for the conversation we had. She would have been in the mythological perspective that nothing is bothering her, though a lot was bothering her. So yes, Black folks are in a white supremacy trauma trance. We're not fully present. We're just barely present. We also have been trained to, and I mean psychologically present, we have been trained to be the accommodators of white supremacy. And whenever we do anything that could actually go against that, we have relapses, we fight with each other, we have paralysis in terms of not really moving. We only come out to fight for ourselves temporarily when there's something on video that's so embarrassing to the ego and humiliating to the ego that we have a momentary impulse to make up for being publicly humiliated by the video of a murder, but then we relapse back into our norms because we're really not sure if our lives are valuable. I'm talking about Black people, I'm talking about white folks. I really don't give a damn about whether they value our lives or not. My concern is if we value our lives. Like you might have heard me say before as a kid, is that the Black Lives Matters movement was problematic in that we were asking them, can we please matter? And that's a submissive, white supremacist accommodationist angle. We should have
talk about it. So many people have observed, we went from Black power to Black Lives Matter. Talk about it.
Absolutely. And I've been saying for years now, we should have a shirt that says, don't F with us. But I didn't use the word F. I'm on your show. Now, I know you're going to probably say F before the show is over. But I'm not used to publicly saying F, so I might say it before the show is over too, inspired by you, sister, because you don't play. But anyway,
I don't play. This is real talk. We keep it real on this podcast.
Well, I think we should have on shirts that say, don't PHUCK us with us instead of Black Lives Matter. because, like I said before, if we were woke, people will be tiptoeing to even ponder messing with us. I mean, for example, the white gay community, which is a white powerful community, people don't mess with that community.
Very powerful.
And I want to give a little bit of a contrast, but just a little bit, because I don't want to stay on them. But there was a time where homosexuals in this country were jailed, killed, lost their jobs, humiliated, attacked,
Right.
harassed by cops, the whole thing. There's all types of military stories of homosexual people being murdered while they're in the military, but not anymore.
Wow.
Now, because people are woke around their issues, people tiptoe around messing with same-gender loving people or homosexual people, particularly white people, because the white gay movement, the LGBTQ movement, is a white movement. There are black people who speak for them, but it's a white movement. And that's a whole nother topic. We may get to that, but I'm making a contrast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is all connected. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, and and I actually share with the audience really quickly, one of the things that I appreciated about being at your institution was it was an intentionally Black space to talk about. And I love the fact that you are so African-centered, you do your own defining. So you have encouraged me to use the language same gender loving within our community. I learned so much from you that night. I learned, the history of Black same gender loving folks, from the 60s and beyond, and I also learned from you just other terms. And I appreciated the fact that you even affirmed some of the elder Black folks who were in the room who just couldn't wrap their mind around it. And you made the space intentionally safe for Black people to speak up so that we can begin to basically have a better relationship within the community with our same gender loving brothers and sisters. So for that, I certainly appreciate it. And it's all connected in the Black pain story. And I think you share it so well.
Well, thank you. But since you brought that up, I'm going to mention something that I think is relevant to that in terms of Black people who step back or who are concerned about that issue, or who are concerned about the Black people and Black men have dealt with abuse and things that might be leading to this. This is what I think we need to understand, at least at first. Trump became president because homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, no sexual, tall, short, old, young, all kinds of white folks came together and say, look, we had 8 years of this half Black man and his wife throwing a wrench in the myth of our superiority. And now it's in question that we're superior because a person who identifies as Black, who we identify as Black on certain days, I'm talking about who I call Barack Obama, we have to fix this and put the whitest, craziest, pro-white, white-affirming man that we can think of in the White House so we can make up for Obama. And that's what they did. My point is, among Black people, even if you have differences with Black people because of how you perceive their sexuality, etc., we need to at least one day just come together so we can have power, prowess, and an impact, and make it people second guess messing with us. Right now, they don't. 2 Asians got hollered at recently, or one Asian got beat up, and now even who I call Obama, y'all call her Kamala, now she is talking about don't mess with Asians, and 5 of them or 6 of them were killed or something, which is horrible. I want to be real clear. I think it's horrible when anybody's murdered, but the bottom line is we can't even get a calculator that works with a number high enough to calculate how many of us have been killed. And we still are, I haven't heard Obama talk, I'm talking about Kamala, sorry, I call her Obama. I haven't heard her talk about Black oppression as while she's in that position and the murder of Black people. But she came out talking about don't mess with the Asians. So anyway, all that to say is that if we unify and engage our differences, which is what I was trying to do with the meeting that you're talking about that was at the Amasi Center, I didn't ask everybody to agree with me. I didn't ask everybody to like me, right. but I asked everybody to care about Black people and everybody to engage us across our diversity so we can have enough of a collective consciousness to win.
And to me, that's consistent with my politic as a Pan-African Black nationalist. It's consistent, is our love for Black people, like you said, across the spectrum, across the diversity of all of our identities. And to me, that's the center, and that's what matters.
Yes. And white people showed us what unity looked like. Half the people that put Trump in the White House were people that he had no respect for, which is women, and was talking about grabbing pussies and all kind of stuff. And they're like pussy or no pussy, white power. Talking about women now.
Yeah.
Because usually people think about white power, think of men. No, there's women.
No, I don't.
Involved.
I know a lot of people in the social justice movement think that white women belong with us in this spectrum of oppression.
Really?
That's an inaccurate assessment. That is dangerous.
Please. I mean, let me stay professional, please.
Yeah. I mean, it's real. I mean,
it's real.
You got to be historically accurate to know that white women are the second most powerful group in this country and the second most wealthiest group in this country because of their connection to white men. Is period. They benefit from patriarchy. That's what Dr. Tommy Curry says all the time. Yes. They are one of the biggest beneficiaries of patriarchy.
And the women have led to the murder of lots of black people.
Oh, yes.
Lots of black people.
The sister Stephanie, I forget her last name, but she wrote a book, said they were her slaves. I mean, they were her property, talking about white women slave owners.
That's right.
Like recapturing and telling the story of that history, something that feminism, right, conveniently leaves out. I'm talking about just feminism itself, not the black iterations of feminism, because there are certainly black women who identify as black feminists who have absolutely mentioned the horrific history of white supremacy being carried out by white women. And to that point, it was a white woman, police officer, who murdered our brother, Deontay Wright, this past Sunday in Minneapolis. And so that to me, I feel like that to me is more evidence, right? That, white women, the feminism for them has been fighting to have equitable power with their men. And this white woman certainly had equitable power as a white man in this murdering of this young brother. And I do not believe the official story. She was allowed to resign. So that's a tactic that a lot of times they use to preserve their pension. Everybody keeps talking about her 26-year veteran. She knew better. You are a 26-year veteran and you are a trainer and the president of the FOP, which is the union for the cops. And you want us to believe that you made a mistake between a taser and a gun? I don't think so. What is your assessment?
Well, one of my assessments is that our focus on white behavior should be minuscule in our conversation. It has to be talked about because it is a phenomena that affects us. But what we need to start working on transforming is black behavior and coming out of the trance. And the conversation is still relevant because another white woman murdered Botham Jean, who was at home minding his own business. There's
another white yep.
But the black trans part came out when the judge got up and hugged the murderer. And when the victim of a family murder got up and was talking about saying positive things about the brother of the murdered in the jury anyway, don't get me started. I get so upset about it that sometimes I have to.
Me too. Sometimes,
breathe.
You gotta, But no, this is righteous indignation. You can keep it all the way 100.
But we have to look at, and we don't look at it enough, Zakia, at the extreme damage white supremacy mythology and anti-blackness, which is almost the same thing, has done to black impulses, black worldview, black behavior, and even how black people engage each other and black people's inability to successfully defend ourselves. We have been contaminated. And I want to say this one more time for the first time before I go any further. It's all healable. We can be transformed. We can be healed. This can change. It doesn't have to stay like this. This is a man-made intrusion. It's a man-made traumatization of black people and women-made, since we've already made that clear about women being involved, white women, and it can be cured. But black people who are in leadership, which is almost anybody with a child, which is almost anybody who's in the presence of children, which is almost anybody who's in the presence of a Black person who needs to be guided, which is almost all of us. We have to start operating 24/7 in ways that are problem solving about Black people waking up from the trauma trance. Because I'm telling you, Zakia, we're in a trauma trance. I'll give you an example. I'll give you two. I was at the gas station the other night, and this young brother recognized me from TV or someplace. He said, "Dr. Manago, I thought they were going to stop killing us." And I said, "Who? You know who?" I said, "Who? I don't know. You haven't said it yet. You know who." And I said, why did you ever think that they were going to stop killing us? Well, Black Lives Matters made people care about us. And I thought because of Black Lives Matters, people cared and they were going to stop. I said, okay, who's killing us and who needs to stop? And he wouldn't say it. He was protecting white folks who weren't even there.
Damn.
And you've seen grown Black people complain about racism and go, there's this white girl at my job, grown people, and ain't nobody white nowhere except in here. I used to call it back in the day, but now it's such an old term, it doesn't make any sense anymore. But I used to call it the Cato Kaelin syndrome, because Cato Kaelin was this white boy that lived on O.J. Simpson's multi-million-dollar estate for free.
I remember that name, yeah.
And I call Black people got a white person living in our psyche, taking up space for free that we will not evict. And until we evict her or him from our psyche and stop whispering and stop tiptoeing around whiteness, because see, that's why I said we're not woke. Like I said, at the risk of being redundant, if we were woke, like white gays made the society in terms of gay issues, like Jews have made the society, like others have made the society, people think twice about messing with these other groups. We are not woke until they are afraid to mess with us, but we have to love ourselves enough to feel worthy of protection. We keep allowing ourselves to be fooled. I'm going to say it, people are not going to like it, but Black Lives Matter was a distraction.
Damn.
It was a whim and a distraction that was brought into being by a mixture of the press and others, and the people that get credit for starting it don't even like Black men.
Woo, that's a whole word now.
And so we're finding that people keep pimping Black tragedy. And I know a number of people, I'm talking about who are physically Black but traumatized and dealing with anti-Black unconscious issues, who are pimping Blackness because they don't have enough respect for themselves, let alone Black people, to let alone love them as life partners, but as people who they defend for as a way of life. This is Black Lives Matter was happenstance. You can't win, Zakia, when your movements are happenstance. One more thing I'll say about this that helps to make my point. If Black Lives Matters was a real option, they would have stepped up and double teamed on everything during the Trump administration. You know what I'm saying? If they were real, they would. We never saw them at all during the Trump administration. We didn't see them. Now, people will say stuff about, well, it's because they weren't in the press. They know how to make press. They know how to get in the press. All they got to do is call Joy Reid, anybody in the leftist, liberal, white supremacist press, and say, let us be on TV, and they would be on TV. One of them, I'm not going to say their name right now, but one of them said, look, I'm tired of this. I'm over this. I'm tired of this Black Lives Matter. So I've moved on to other things. Well, you only move on, Zakia, when everything has been complete. We are not finished with this fight. So why did you move on? Because you weren't serious in the first place. Anyway, getting back to the trance. Black people are in a white supremacy trauma trance because the TV that we watch, the education that we get, the religion that's forced on us in slavery when they made African spirituality illegal, our first and last names, our whole frame of reference of what's great and what's beautiful and everything, it's all dangerous contamination of white supremacy. We must learn to counter that as a way of life, like eating lunch, like eating dinner, like praying. We must be real clear about the fact that we are inside of a contaminant called white supremacy mythology. That's we're going into several generations into the lack of solutions to having been contaminated. And as long as we go into another generation unclean in terms of the white supremacy mythology in our psyche, it's gonna continue because they keep on raising the bar. The last thing I'll say in terms of them raising the bar is, as you know, I'm sure you must know, we haven't talked about this, but you can see they keep pushing biracialism. You can find a three-headed dog before you can find
Biracialism, multiracialism, all of that.
They're pushing that. They're pushing Black people. Let me explain this here. I'm gonna relax and say this slowly because I want your watchers to know this, so they can understand how white supremacy methodology works. Stop saying one drop rule and all this stuff. Is that when Black people give a white people the child is black. Stop saying that. White people put that line on you back during slavery when they were looking for new excuses to downgrade Black anything. But they change. Any group that's successful changes their strategy and goes to the drawing board to make it stronger and rewrites what they were doing so they can have the same goals of power. White supremacy sociologists understand that if Black people find white people to be the objects of their love, or light-skinned people who could pass for white, to be the objects of their of love, and if they find white people to be who they think is more lovable than Black people, then we will be less loyal to Black people. And they know that. So they're creating systems. It's very difficult to watch television and see a Black person loving another Black person. You cannot find a reliable television series that's not a comedy. And that's important because comedies aren't taken seriously because people are laughing and making jokes, and they don't have a serious impact on the psyche, but dramas do. And you cannot turn the television on and see an independent love story that is not contaminated by whiteness between two Black people who love each other and see this every week on television. So Black children are watching television. Sometimes the television is literally their babysitter and being taught to hate themselves and to devalue Blackness and to love whiteness. And we wonder why people like the young brother in Sacramento who was murdered by the cops, who said that Black women caused dark days. Now we wonder why some of us think like that when everything is teaching us that.
That is so true.
They're pushing biracialism. And a lot of us think, and this is where the trans impact comes in, that it's progress. Showing Black people with white people is progress. Let me tell you what progress is. Progress is showing Black people loving Black people. That's what progress is. The other day, well, it was longer than the other day, a few days ago or so, I was talking to this brother who was telling me, he also recognized me in the streets. Yeah, man, we had a long conversation. And he said, yeah, man, I be effing me some white women because I'm getting back at racism and I'm getting mine. I said, no, brother. How do you get back at white supremacy is love a Black woman and marry and nurture a Black woman and nurture and raise some powerful Black children who love themselves. I think it's an excuse anyway that you came up with to do what you're doing. But just in case you have somewhere serious in your mind about what you think you're doing. If you want to get revenge, raise strong Black people and strong Black families. Biracialism is not doing nothing but feeding into their agenda. Because if you got a white daddy-in-law and a white mother-in-law and white niece and nephews, your children got a white grandmama and all this kind of stuff, they're going to second guess the value of Blackness or Black issues because they got this other thing going on. So the trance is deep, and I want to say this before people start attacking. There's such thing as people loving somebody regardless of all of that, and you can love somebody who's not Black.
You crazy, Dr. Cleo.
It's possible to love somebody Black white because you love them, but regardless of that, if you check out the doll test that the Clarks did in the late 30s and 40s. Black children from the late 30s to the 2020s are still choosing the white doll over the Black doll. Because Zakia, this is the issue. See, I hope we're not confusing people with all these issues, but the bottom line is that nothing changes until you resolve the issue. And we have not resolved the issues that were alive and well in the 1930s up until now that lead Black children into devaluing Black people. We haven't resolved it. We don't even talk about it. And we still call each other the N-word. And the N
Well,
word.
that's why. Well, let's talk about this because see, you a
Sure.
doctor, and I know you know all about this at the university level. Let me just talk about this. There was an all-out assault on African-centered theories and African epistemology in the university, and they used other Black people in the university, like Henry Skip the Truth Gates, against people like Dr. John Henrik Clark, right? And against folks like Malefi Asante, others. And so these are the people, and I know for a fact, Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu on the education side and Dr. Janice Hale Williams, out of Wayne State University on the education side, talking about the need and the importance of positive self-images. So from the jump, thankfully, both of my children have positive self-images. When they walk in their room, there's Blackness on their walls. My daughter, people already know me and my family. Don't buy my daughter no white doll. It's going in the trash. Or we're going to give it back to you. You feel me though? It's going in the trash. So my daughter, I would love to do a doll test on her because all of her images reflect who she is. And I remember when she was a baby, there was hardly any how you decorate the baby's room in a certain kind of theme. And the only one I could find was Doc McStuffins. And so her room as a baby, because that was a Black cartoon character, was Doc McStuffins for so long. And so that piece, I thank goodness that I read Asa Hilliard. I thank goodness that I read all of these African-centered, theorists, so that I could change the way that I even thought, because I wasn't socialized in a conscious family. We know, a lot of, and nothing against my family. Black folks trying to do the best they can out here. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't socialized into Black consciousness. I grew up in a regular ass Black family who value work, who value entrepreneurship. And that's it. You know what I mean? A Christian family, all the things that you would think of a typical Black American story in rural Alabama for me. So I came into consciousness really through my experience in college. Shout out to Dr. Boy Katwe, who has repatriated back to his homeland of Liberia, but he was the one who introduced me to the US organization and Ron Karenga. And the list goes on. As they say, I went down the rabbit hole and here we are. So the importance of positive self-images and actually retraining and re-socializing our minds out of the white supremacy trends, honestly, is a everyday task. And I know you know that.
Absolutely. And I want to add to what you mentioned. If you watch a film called A Girl Like Me, where this sister in the early 2000s, and I forgot her name, I apologize for that, but the film is called A Girl Like Me. It can be found on YouTube. And she recreated the doll test. Some of those adorable, beautiful children who chose the white doll had locks. And in many instances, when a parent chooses to give their children locks, their intention is that that child feels affirmed and that the child's psyche is outside of white supremacy mythology. However, what some of these parents miss is that you have to give a child, and a child as young as 3 years old can capture this. You have to teach the child how to have a critical analysis. You have to give the child a critical analysis. And because white supremacy mythology is so extended and so vast and so everywhere, you have tons and tons of examples that you can teach them to actually see it in real life and be able to break it down. For example, and I teach Black parents this, when your child watches television and notices that there's a bunch of biracial people, or they'll see a commercial, and there's several where there's a biracial child and their one white parent is walking them down the street to sell whatever was going on. Let that child see that and ask them, what do you think? What's your perspective of this? And they have one, trust me. And if they're slow to talk about it, say, well, for example, the majority of the commercials we've seen and TV shows we've seen show black people with white people, and not that many black people with black people or black people loving black people. What do you think? And they'll say stuff like, well, somebody is pretty or they're funny. They won't be able to get into what you want them to get into. So you have to go further and go, okay, when we go to family reunions, when we're with our family, do you see a bunch of biracial people all over the place? And the child's going to say no, because biracial people are a minority in the country. So ask them, so why do you believe though biracial people are the minority, where they show on almost everybody biracial? What do you think, baby? And don't answer the question. Just what you have done is start them to actually being analytical when they see things. I was doing a tour of the country at mental health conferences when Dylan Roof shot 12 people and murdered 9 people.
And the police took his ass to Burger King. Ooh,
right. But
it's outrageous.
But they're doing what they do. I want us to look at what we do, and I'm going to make a point, and I'm going to try to make it briefly. I was in one city where I spoke to over 1,000 people who were in the audience, and almost all of them, all black. It was a black mental health conference. Had their children with them. About half the people there had children with them. And I'm abbreviating this story because of time. I asked them, I said, how many of you heard about Dylan Roof? Everybody heard about Dylan Roof. I said, can I ask your children a question? I promise to be respectful, but I want to get your permission before I ask your children this question. And if you think the question is inappropriate, let them know and let me know, and we'll move on. And the parents said, okay. I said, I want to ask your children, do they know about Dylan Roof? And of course, the parents said I could answer. I said, okay, young people, do you know who Dylan Roof is? And the majority of them knew who Dylan Roof was. I said, okay, babies, what did Dylan Roof do? A young man, he must have been, I don't know, 8 or 7. And he said, I'm getting emotional thinking about this. Let me breathe. He said he killed some black people. I said, okay, parents, if I ask questions that you're uncomfortable with, let me know and we can move on. Okay, so I have a question for you parents. I said, how many of you parents actually took your child aside and checked in with them and asked them how they felt about that situation? And tell the truth, because the child is sitting right there. And you must give them positive role modeling so they can be an adult that you respect and that respects you. So how many of you actually engaged your children and invited a conversation? Over 90% of them had not. Because what a lot of African Americans do, similar to what you just described, Zakia, they get a job, go to church, go to school, get a good education, get a good job. Not be a critical analyst, not deconstruct this stuff so you won't fall for it, not stop calling black people N-words and saying stuff like sit your black ass down, which dehumanizes and makes blackness a plaything, because nobody else does that. Asians don't sit your Asian ass down. Latinos don't. We love to talk about black and brown, though there's vast differences. Brown people don't say sit your brown ass down. We're the only ones that do it, not because we're defective, but because we were enslaved for over 200 years and we were trained to racialize ourselves instead of seeing ourselves as full human beings.
That's a great, yeah. No, and so, I get emotional when I think about this, and I spent most of the day last Friday just in tears. For the folks who follow me on Facebook know I posted this emotional post because when I learned of DMX's death, it triggered my memory of my brother who passed away in 2014. He's only 43 years old. He had a heart attack, and by the time he was found, it was, he was just unresponsive and he had to be put on life support. He lived as well on life support for 6 days until his wife made the decision. And there was some family, it was definitely some bickering going on because I was one of them who wasn't ready to let go. Ultimately, men, women, y'all need to know these things, have a healthcare directive for what your wishes are, because the hospital has to follow the law, and the next of kin is your spouse. We need to get with making sure we got our business in order, family, because my family, we went through a lot. And his funeral was tense, everything, because so many of us, like me and as his sister and other folks in the family, you know, she went against our wishes. We weren't ready for her to pull the plug on him, but she had the power to do that according to state law in Michigan. So I say all that to say to people, make sure y'all have y'all stuff together. You know, I'm in the midst of creating an estate plan right now with my family and having all of my ducks in a row, having healthcare directive. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of times I never heard of a healthcare directive until I was dealing with my mom when she was sick. I never knew it was a thing. You know, we don't talk about things like that. But the larger point that I'm trying to make to that connects to what you just raised, Dr. Manago, is that DMX's childhood was horrific. And one of the things that I loved about him, and you know, he talked about it through his music a lot. If folks remember the song Slippin' and the video and everything, he talked about his traumas as a child. He was always very vulnerable a lot. His mother abandoned him and his sister. He was beaten with a broom by his mother and knocked 2 teeth out of his mouth when he was 6. 6. I have a 6-year-old right now. I could not imagine taking a broom and beating my baby till teeth fell out. And so that pain, I just thought about how he carried that for 50 years. You know what I'm saying? You know, or 44 years, you know. So, this is hard, man, talking about this, because there's a lot of Black folks who have to hide the fact that we had, and I'm one of them. Sometimes we hide the fact that we've had tumultuous childhood. I'm of the, you know, crack era in the 80s, you know what I mean, that took out both of my parents, and I had to be raised by my great-grandparents. But thankfully, I didn't have any of those other horrible things like molestation and things like that. I thank God for being, you know, with family in Alabama. You know, they weren't perfect, but they did the best they could with their great-grandbaby. But I just say all that to say that I know that you see this in your work. I know you work with a lot of young men who have come from similar households or similar backgrounds. Can you just share from your expertise for folks who are just joining as a behavioral scientist, what is your analysis from an African-centered perspective on how we heal from the traumas that we inflict within the community?
Ooh. Well, first of all, our lives and our history are not in context. We don't know the context. I also came from a very difficult childhood. And I came from similar to what you described, everyday Black people, classic Black people in terms of just normal trying to survive and going to school, giving recommendations, get a job. No analysis was ever recommended, just survival tactics. And I reference my own childhood because, you know, going to school from kindergarten to PhD, there are no formal classes or contexts that teaches you to deconstruct the context of being a Black person historically, or a person of African descent historically in the society. So when you see abuse and experience abuse and you're Black and you hear stuff like "sit your Black ass down," etc., you associate Blackness with pain. You associate Black skin with drama, trauma, and there's a reason why these Black children, since the 30s up until now, keep choosing the white doll as better than the Black doll, and assigning to the Black doll negative descriptions like ugly, bad, etc. And this is how deep the trance is. You can see pictures of hangings and the murder of Mary Ford, who was burned alive after defending her husband. You can see white people doing all kinds of horrific stuff to us, to Native Americans, all kinds of people, and still default them into being angelic enough to be chosen as the best between black and white. So in terms of what to do regarding answering your question, and I started answering this earlier, is that black people have to start being intentionally black affirming. It can't be happenstance. It can't wait until the next murder that's on video and the new Black Lives Matters Part 2, whatever that white folks gonna come up with and put a black face on it of black people who don't like black people, which unfortunately is not difficult to find in a white supremacist run country. We have to understand that we have to put our lives in context, and we have to know what we have actually done and learn positive things about being black. And we have to teach our children that white supremacist mythology is a corruption and teach them to decode and recognize it everywhere that it is. One of the things I was saying to you earlier, which is part of the answer, is that these parents in this film, A Girl Like Me, were trying to affirm their children, but they never gave them critical analysis. They might have had locks, but they put them in front of the television, which is one of the biggest poisoners in the Western world, and didn't teach them to look at it with a critical eye. So when they saw all of the perpetual anti-black implications, when they saw shows called Power, which uses the word power to imply that these black people live powerful lives, but it's a story about a glorified drug dealer who's married to a black woman who he doesn't touch, who he fights with, and makes more love to a white-looking Latina than he does his own wife. That's
I know, and I'm guilty of being a power watcher. I hear you, brother.
Well, if you're watching it with a critical eye, and your children are sitting next to you, and they see it with a critical eye, no, we're being entertained, we're enjoying this, pass the popcorn, but this is some racist, corrupt BS that we're enjoying. It's racist and corrupt that the black man, and first of all, it's all fiction. Let's be clear. It's all a concocted fiction.
But it's projecting. It's projecting. Yeah.
Right. But it's allowed to be on television because it has negative attributes. If it was powerful and affirming of us in real ways, it wouldn't be on television, or it would get one season. They're going into Power 1900 Part 2, something. And the bottom line is, like Empire, which was also a show about a drug slinging family that got into the record business. Then you got Chi-Town, which is about drugs. And I mean, the way they constantly show us, we have to have black children understand that this is corrupt and white and racist. We can sit there and enjoy this because we can't, if we can't find that, I ain't watching it. I don't watch it. But we need to know, there's another show called This Is Us, Just Us, or This Is Us. And black people love to say, well, that's a positive black couple. Well, the brother was literally created by white saviors.
Damn.
Literally. Do you watch the show?
No, I haven't watched that one. I only watch a few shows. I've watched because I actually don't have television for the reasons that you're talking about right now. I'm gonna tell you real quickly.
By telepathy, how you watching Power?
No, I watch Power because I watch it on my phone. Stars has an app. You know, a lot of things are streaming now. People are getting rid of. Oh yeah. So no. What I'm saying is that I actually got rid of television. My son will be 14 this year. He was around 3 years old when I got rid of TV. And I got to tell people this. I read the book at that time by Noam Chomsky called Manufacturing Consent, and he analyzes that basically everything that we watch on TV is created for political reasons.
That's right.
And you are actually talking about it right here.
That's right. Everything. Well, my point is, because I don't want to lose people with a long explanation, is that we're not under attack because we're bad black people. We're not under attack because something's wrong with us, black people. We're under attack for the same reason Africa is under attack, because of its natural resources, because of its natural ability, because of its swagger, because of its magic, because of its majesty, because there's something going on inside the African body that's mesmerizing, and white people can't match it or replicate it honestly, so they must control it. If they control it, then they feel like they're still in control, and we're not really a superior group because we become their products and we become customers for their issues. So we need to understand that we're under attack, not because something's wrong with our noses and our bodies and our skin color. It's because people are profoundly envious of us and fearful of us and fearful of what we would do if we were awake. So understand that the attack is not based on a position of inferiority. It may, and I'm going to say may, because I don't want to be absolute with this, but I'll say it may be based on some level of superiorities that African people walk around with. Just imagine, I don't know if you've ever been to Kemet, Sakia, or what they call Egypt.
Not yet.
But just imagine, when you go, you'll see what I'm talking about. You got to go. You got to go to Kemet. You're gonna lose your mind when you go to Kemet. You're gonna lose your mind when you go into the Valley of the Queens and the Kings and see these people on the walls who make me look light skinned, they so black. And then turn the television on and see Tom Cruise playing an Egyptian and realize how intentional white folks are in terms of how they're trying to brainwash us. But the bottom line is that it's important that we understand that we're under attack, because some of us think we're under attack and we have to beg white folks to matter and please let us matter, Black Lives Matter, because we're deficient. No, we're under attack because of the opposite of deficiency. So let's be clear about that. And let's be clear that the television, for example, is creating a disproportionate amount of biracial people because they're trying to white us out, including psychologically, by disproportionately creating a group of people that are this big and making them that big so we can feel like we're this big and want to be like them. The reality is most Black people are marrying and loving other Black people. But statistics...
That's a fact. That's a fact.
But if you watch TV, and including who a lot of famous, well-known and respected white people are running behind, you would think that's not true. If you watch CNN and saw the three men that they've given the show to Van Jones, they've given the show to Don Lemon, they've given the show to this dude called Something Bell, who's a comedian. And guess what they all have?
W. Kamau Bell, and all of them have white partners.
All of them have white partners. And like some of you have heard me say before, there's no such thing as an accidental pattern. There's 60 million options in this country among Black people to choose. You choosing three black men with white partners. That's because that's part of the agenda. Now, I'm not saying that Van Jones and Don Lemon and Bale, whatever his name is, are actively interested in the agenda or part of the agenda, but white people know who are compromisable and who are manipulatable, and they also know how to find Black people who clearly love them very much because that's who's literally next to them every night at home. They love them, but they look like Black people to us. So if you don't have a critical analysis, you'll fall for the okie doke. And I know okie doke is not a high scholar term, but you know what I mean. I say okie doke. So the long and the short answer to your question is that Black people need to have a critical analysis, need to be actively deconstructing where we live, actively deconstructing and teaching their children how to deconstruct the white supremacy mythology and the anti-Black mythology, and understand that we are subject to a corruption called white supremacy mythology. It's a normal corruption in the culture that we have to teach our children to recognize it and understand that other people do that. Asians do that. You know, one thing I also say to make a contrast so we can know what not to do, Black people's mantra for the past 5 years or so has been Black Lives Matter. Jews' mantra is never again. You ain't doing it again.
Never again.
That's an active defensive mantra, not saying Gentiles, please let us matter, because they have not been brainwashed and domesticated out of their bodies. We have been actively domesticated, like they do dogs and cats.
Damn, Cleo.
Again, though, it's all fixable. Though I want to be clear, it's all fixable.
Well, let's talk about some of the strategies to fix it, because I don't want to end on that note. Woo.
But it's true.
I know. I'm rocking with you. But let's talk about some of the strategies, because I know you're a behavior scientist, and for the people who new to to the program here. Welcome. Let me see some new faces, digital faces in the building, as they say. One of the things that I know people are probably going to start lighting up the comments, well, how can we deal with this, right? How can we turn this around? What are some of the strategies from a behavioral scientist perspective that African people here and really globally can change this whole domestication? Because they aren't just domesticating American Africans. It's also happening in the Caribbean. It's also happening on the continent and everywhere, India and everywhere where, you know, your African people are. South America, yes. How do we undomesticate ourselves?
Well, first of all, Sakia, you, and I keep asking others to do this, have to have a show that from beginning to end, the focus is problem solving.
Well, let's do it.
That has to be the agenda and the focus.
Let's set up a panel.
And people have to be watching for that to happen. And I'm gonna warn you, I'm gonna give some information, but not all of it, because people need to be involved in my CTCA critical thinking and culture affirmation strategy and work at the Amasi Center. And we're getting ready to do some of this work virtually because COVID has taught us that we can do stuff virtually. But we have to this. I hate to simplify it, but the bottom line is this: all powerful people have classes that their children and adults have to go to. There's Asian class, there's even white gay class, there's Jewish class. I have a nephew in Northern California who's half Chinese and half black. Obviously, my family is his black part, which is what his mother is, and he stays with his Chinese grandparents. And that's another story in terms of how that happened. But he goes to Chinese class. And when we get together for family reunions, we can tell that he went to Chinese class because he's calm, he's focused, he's watching, he's not tearing up stuff and calling people N-words and doing all kinds of post-slavery stuff. He is a different type of child. My point is, we have to have black class. And my work is black class. My organization is black class. And if I don't talk about what to do with the whole context that it deserves, it's just talk, because people will relapse if they don't get a potent level of black class. And what is in black class, Sakia, is critical analysis, media literacy, unlearning internalized white supremacy mythology and anti-black mythology, looking at behavior and impulses, including the N-word, and learning to purge ourselves from everything that hurts us and learn to be logical. For example, and this is in the class, have you heard of the term kafir?
What was that again?
The term kafir.
No.
Okay, well, it's spelled Kafir. And it's a term that the Dutch use in Azania to low-rate the so-called South Africans, or the Azanians and the Zulus, and the same genesis of the N-word, which you know that word is, kafir has this exact same genesis as what the Danish use in South Africa to get their minds ready for apartheid. Right. However, unlike us, who have famous songs on the radio, like "I ain't going back and forth with you N-words, I'm living my best life." In Azania, don't nobody African call themselves a kafir. But the reasons why are important. They weren't domesticated geographically, linguistically, and self-conceptually. They're still on the land. They still have access to original languages, which informs their logic base, so they know what an insult is when they see it and hear it, and they say, "Oh no, we now that apartheid is over, in particular, we ain't doing kafir." See, because we only know English, which is an anti-black language, and I can prove it. You've heard about Dark Days and Angel Food Cake and the Devil's Food Cake.
Yep, all of that.
You know, the great white shark and the killer whale who's black, even though the great white shark is more vicious, but it's called the great white shark.
Oh, great, right.
There's all this language that we have. Our filter in terms of indigenous linguistic perspective has been compromised by only speaking English. So we don't even know how to decipher. We can get it fixed. I want to keep that in here. We can fix all of this. I speak more than one language, and I know the value of language. But the bottom line is that they don't call themselves kafir because they still are situationally in a place that informs their logical part of their mind, and they know an insult when they see one. We don't know an insult when we see one. Matter of fact, and I'm gonna cuss to make my point. When we cussing each other out, sometimes the worst part of it, and the more emphasis on you black motherfucker. You're not just a motherfucker, you a black one. You understand? You've seen what I'm saying with your own eyes.
I heard it. Yeah.
I know you heard it and you've seen it. So my point is that we have to unlearn some deep mythology about blackness and whiteness as the foundation of our learning. And I teach that. Our organization teaches that. And I have guided many a black person out of the arms, circumstance, and addiction to whiteness and to black affirmation, black love, and black healthiness. It can be done. I mean, I've met some cases, and I won't get into the cases I've done and met with in my life in terms of the level of anti-blackness that's sexualized, that's romanticized, that's academic. I mean, we are dealing with a lot of layers of things that is totally resolvable, but we have to have black class. So that's part of the solution. Now that's somewhat ambiguous. So I gave you some information in terms of cause and effect and context, but we need to be pushing everybody. Did you go to black class? What's up, brother? So did you go to black class? Mm-hmm. When you get finished with that chicken, are you gonna go to black class?
Right.
Now the words black class don't even register right now because we ain't used to black class. You know what I'm saying? Right. Now we're talking about economics, but black folks need to go to black class. Right. And I'm an instructor of black class.
I'm sharing your instruction of a black class right now, your amazing website so that people can go, that you're not just yapping and talking about it. You actually have a physical institution, a building, certainly before COVID, where you actually have black people that you love come in for services. And you do a lot of this work. As you mentioned, your organization is Amasi, Health, Culture, and Affirmation. And we're on the website now. See a beautiful black boy, just handsome and as happy as he can be. You're talking about raising awareness and advocating for the mental, physical, emotional, and cultural health of a diverse black community. So I'm just sharing your website to let people know they can come to the website, and just everything that you're talking about is there. You're actually living, doing the work, talking about unifying. Yes, talk about it. I mean, in fact, this might.
Let them. You were in that room.
Yeah, I was there. I'm looking for myself. Like, where am I?
Can you put the picture down so they can see the whole picture?
Yep. Hold on. Let me do that. There we go. Yeah, where am I? I remember that.
Well, we've had lots of events, so you may or may not be in this picture. I don't know. We had a lot of stuff, but that's black people clapping for black people, honoring black people, and clapping after having had black class.
Right. Right.
And that's our T-shirt. Value black people. We ain't talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about black people. Value black people.
Right.
And that's some of our staff and volunteers.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, no. So you know, there's a lot of people out here who talk it, but you are actually talking and walking the walk. You know, living out your love for black people, and that's what I appreciate so much about you, is that you've been, a practitioner. Clearly, you're a black man who loves black people. And you're doing everything in your power to help heal us from the things that you see from a behavior perspective. Yes. Like you said, keep telling people we can undo it. We can change it. We can undo it.
It could be undone, but not.
And your website is clearly a resource that people can come to and just read.
Yeah. So I don't want to neglect your question.
Sure. No. Yeah. I just wanted to show people. Keep talking.
But we have to have black class. Almost every group around us is doing better than us, including are able to defend themselves because they have class for their people.
That's right.
And we have class to learn how to be white, to learn how to be professional on their terms,
Right.
to get a job.
Right.
And one of the most horrible lines, and you've heard it before, Zakia, is you got to go out there and be twice as good as the white man.
Right.
Well, the problem with that one line, which is well intended, is that it implies that we're twice as bad. We have to make up for being black twice as hard, instead of saying this is what the line should be. White supremacy is a horrific corruption that contaminates the society. So you have to work really hard to learn how to navigate it through successfully, because it's wrong, not you.
Right.
See, that's a very clear line. It's wrong, not you. And a lot of black children don't hear that. They hear, be as good as a white man and sit your black ass down, N-word. And all of that stuff recreates the myth of white superiority and black inferiority. And that whole thing, that whole line was created by white people. It was white people who told us to set our black asses down first. It was white people who called us the N-word first. White people said, you're not fully human. So you have to work twice as hard to be as human as us. All myth, while they knew the truth about us, which is why they never allowed an African to go back to the continent once they came here. And they did create Liberia, and that's a whole nother.
Yeah, Liberia was created through the American Colonization Society.
Look at their flag. Their flag looks just like.
Look at their flag, right.
Because white people created Liberia, and they also created the horrific chaos in Liberia, because you cannot be black and at peace, because when you're black and at peace, white people feel like you're a threat to them. Like Paul Moody once said, that's one of my favorite comedians. He said to this he said to this black woman on stage with him, he said, "Your hair is relaxed." He said, "That's good, because when black people's hair is relaxed, white people relax."
I know. I remember that he tell that all the time. Paul Mooney is a nut. He also say everybody want to be an N-word, but don't nobody want to be an N-word. Talking about the contradictions of how white people and even black people of color, will take some of the culture and take some of the things from blackness that black people create, and they'll culturally appropriate it, right? But then when it comes to police murder and state-sanctioned violence and all the things that we face, then that part they don't want to be the N-word. That's how I interpret that.
Well, of course, because that part is part of their creation to create a murderous distraction, so we can stay in a trance and stay in their control. So they got to create the horror and black trauma.
The fear. Fear is a part of it too. Paralyzing fear.
Paralysis, absolutely.
Yep.
So we have to one thing that I say about myself, hopefully inspire others, is that you can't make me mad at enough of the black person to call them the N-word. You can't make me mad enough of the black person to defile blackness. You can't make me mad at another black person to call them a black anything as part of my insult.
Wow.
Because I have respect for myself as a black person and as a person of African descent. So if I defile you, I'm defiling me. I ain't having it. I'm not defiling me.
Wow. Yeah.
And I literally see you and me as the same. So I'm not doing it. It makes no sense. I can't get that, man. I've done workshops at university with white folks. And I said, I'll give you one more story. I spoke at Brown University some years ago. And I asked, I do a lot of exercises to trigger critical thinking. I asked the white folks, I said, "White folks, get up." And I said it with an attitude on purpose. I said, "Get up, white folks." They were like, who do you think you're talking to? I said, "Get up, white." And they were torn between being liberal and politically correct and wanting to call me the word they were thinking, and they didn't know what to do. And then I purposely backed off and I said, "Stand up, white folks. I'm getting ready to do an exercise." But I started off with an attitude just to make a point. So I said, "White folks, have you ever been to Bank of America? Have you ever been to Apple products? Have you ever been to Disneyland or any place like that?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Have you ever had bad service at Apple? Your iPad wasn't working. You went to Bank of America, they messed up your account." "Yes." I said, "Did you ever say white folks ain't shit? They can't get shit right. They always messing up. I ain't never going back." And they were like, the I didn't even. They were like, "What?"
Right.
No, that didn't even compute. I said, "They're white and they're messing up. Did you ever say I'm not gonna ever go to these crackers again?" And they were so stunned by the question. And then finally, one white person said, "Of course not." I said, "Okay, sit down, white folks." I said, "Black people stand up." And sometimes when black people stand up and they think they're getting ready to be attacked, there's talk in the room, like black bees. There's all this talking going on. So stand up, black folks. I said, "Have you ever been to a black business and it didn't go right, and you said I ain't never gonna go back, and you call them N-words and all this kind of stuff?" And they were. This was a high echelon university, and where everything is pristine. And they were looking at the white people. They didn't know whether to shame themselves. And I quickly and strategically say, "Don't answer. I'm just trying to make a point. I'm not interested in shaming you." Because though I asked them a question first, I'm here for you.
That's
I can't make them leave, so they're actually going to be observers in this process. But I'm here for you. And I want you to see what it looks like to never have the impulse to defy yourself no matter what.
Right. That's good.
If Jeffrey Dahmer ate them instead of ate us, they still will not get mad enough at white folks to say white folks ain't shit. When homeboy who just died today, I think, Robert Madoff, with all those Jews' money, they never said Jews ain't
Bernie
shit.
Madoff?
Bernie Madoff, he just died.
He did? Wow.
Yeah, they never ever went into a universal defiling of Jews. Don't do that, black people. Don't do that. And I want you to know, as someone who goes to Africa back and forth, Africans don't do that.
Wow.
Except for Africans who've been colonized to death, who have learned post-white trauma trans behaviors and traits. But Africans don't even call themselves black. They call themselves Igbo.
I do know that part, yeah.
They only call themselves white when they're in the presence of whiteness. Black. Pardon me. They only call themselves black when in the presence of whiteness, because the dichotomy has been created on behalf of white supremacy. Sometimes they don't know that's what just happened, but that's what happened. Yeah. So I'm giving you these ideas to consider, Zakia, because they can be triggering. They can be white supremacy, trauma trance breaking triggers and considerations for black people to have and think about what we do, but also understand that something has been done to us. For example, the young brother, and there's tons of examples, but I'm making a point and trying to get one that people might remember. The young brother that was murdered in Chicago, where Robert what's his name? Emmanuel, whatever his name was.
Ron Emanuel was the mayor. Laquan McDonald is the brother.
Laquan was murdered by a cop, and they hid the evidence.
Yes.
The point I'm trying to make is that white supremacy always hides the evidence of black greatness. That's why they keep lying, calling the Kemetic people, the so-called Egyptians, white or Martians, anything but Africans.
Anything but African.
And when you go to Kemet, Zakia, trust me, call me, because you're going to be screaming and hollering when you see them sisters and those brothers on those walls who are from that place where it can't be denied. But my point here is a reiteration of the brainwashing that's so intergenerational, that's so entrenched, that we've learned to automatically, independently defile ourselves and whisper the word white to protect them when they're not even in the room. So it could be undone, y'all, though.
That's the sunken place.
Huh?
I said that's the sunken place. Shout out to Jordan Peele for Get Out.
We never got out.
That's what it is, literally.
But he didn't get out.
No,
so
he didn't. Exactly.
I want to say they be letting people who didn't get out talk about get out, because that creates more confusion. We might be, on an intellectual basis, we might be impressed. Look at him make that movie, but it confuses adults and former children and real children. When wait a minute, you next to Brittany, but you made a movie about getting out. So this is fiction, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is not to be taken seriously as a reality to get out. We're using the black struggle as a motif for fiction and for you to make a film that's full of some brilliant things to consider, because we should get out. Right. But that creates confusion, Zakia. That's what I'm trying to make to you, is that why don't they show Samuel Jackson, who's loving a sister down every day, talk about get out with a few cuss words, because he cussed so good. Yeah. Why they won't show that? They know what they're doing. And even the dude who made Get Out, like Obama and all their pets, Barack Obama, all of them, that they're not necessarily involved in the scheme in terms of them intending to be a part of it. But
Sure.
white people are making the choice. For example, there's a lot of sisters who are excited about, we made the president choose a black woman. He chose the black woman he wanted to choose. And I predicted on national television that it was going to be Obama, because she had all the white supremacy, the white love at home and at work, the white adoration, white accommodationist traits that they prefer black people have, who are going to be in positions like vice president.
Well, as they say in church.
But I want us to see, the traits of how the white supremacy methodology works us. And these are all excited with us because of us that Kamala Harris. No, it's because of Biden. Biden chose her. Black women would likely have not chose Kamala Harris. They might have chose that sister with the short fro. What's her name? Karen
Bass.
They probably would. If the sisters really were
She really deserved it. Karen Bass has done some good work.
Yeah, but they would. No, white folks are going to be the ones who make the choice. It ain't going to be no Karen Bass. It's going to be Obama. It's not a coincidence that the first president with African lineage and the first vice president with African lineage are both biracial.
Yep.
It's not a coincidence that when those white kids got killed in Connecticut, Barack Obama went directly to the area to nurture them. He didn't go to no areas to nurture nobody black during this whole administration. And his wife went to Chicago after the murders there, not him. See, black children, that's why I asked these black parents when I spoke at these mental health conferences, children, they see everything.
Yeah. And they're absorbing it. They may not be able to articulate what they're seeing, but it's being absorbed, and subconsciously it's being acted out in certain ways.
Yep. And one of the things I forgot to mention, because I've done so much, I'm an old man, I've done a lot in my life, is that some of the children, particularly the boys, in this first session I did, this mental health group, I spoke to over 1,000 parents, the boys started crying. The little boys started crying. Little boys, this is true for girls too, but girls have more relationship with their emotional chasm and their emotional spectrum than boys are allowed to have. Boys have to be strong, those kind of stuff. Don't you be crying and all that. So all those unnatural guidances from parents, frankly, because boys should cry and men should cry too if they feel like it. But the point I'm making is that while we're not informing these boys and giving them safe space to actually express how they feel about these things, we're limiting their emotional capacity, and they're winding up like DMX would say, I'm about to lose my mind.
Right.
Because we're not creating safe space to be a human being who's been through some shit. And I usually don't cuss, but I got to say it like that. Black people, particularly black men, but black women too, have been through some horrific, horrible stuff. But women are built to take trauma better than men. Women have babies, which is the most painful experience on the human scale of pain that a human being.
So enough, I did it twice.
But men are not built to deal with trauma on an organic basis on the same level that women are naturally built to deal with. So when you don't allow boys and men to be emotionally honest and be in touch with their spectrum and be repressed while they're being attacked and murdered, you creating some problems, sister. And these are problems.
We see it manifesting in our communities in a bunch of different ways.
All the time.
Even on not healthy.
Even on a high profile level, it's not a coincidence that Prince and Michael Jackson, Luther Vandross and DMX and all kinds of other people who's now remembering now are dead around 50 or before 50. These are coincidences.
Right.
So we have to have black class, Zakia.
Black class. We got to have you back because you didn't put a challenge out there. You said there needs to be an entire segment. And I love that you said that, on solutions. And so that's a charge. I definitely want to have you back. And, I'll certainly take recommendations from you for others. We can have an entire panel discussion about solutions that we need to be discussing in the community. So that is my task, and you and I can work on that offline. But I want to do it. We've talked a lot about the problems. I'm not saying we know everything about the problems, but I do think that, in this moment and beyond, there has to be a focus on building institutions like you have already done, right, that are safe for Black people. And then we also have to be very clear about what kind of solutions and problem solving we'll be doing within the community. Yeah, so I mean, we went over time, but I'm good with that. You know
We
what I'm
did?
saying?
Okay.
Because you teaching. No, I mean, it's good. I mean, people rocking with us, they still with us because they listening and they're learning. And this is good. And I hope people, if you felt like you learned something from this, share it. Share it with other people that you love. Share it within, our community. So hopefully folks can listen and get something from this. But Dr. Cleo, it's always fun to have you. And I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. Keep doing it. Keep speaking on behalf of Black people and loving us in all of our stuff, loving us back to healthy ways and being with each other. So any final words that you'd like to share with very active audience? I mean, people, I don't know if you've been watching the comments, but it's been very, people have been pretty active the entire time and appreciating the things that you're sharing. So just some final words, and we'll have you back soon.
Well, sisters and brothers, as Zakia has articulated, I'm here for you. I adore you. You matter the most to me. I am a builder of institutions and learning opportunities and classes and constructs and strategies to turn back the hand of white supremacy mythology on Black people's psyche. We have work to do, and it can be done, and we can resolve this. If we go to Black class for, let's say, 5 years and do it on a national basis, we will be able to come back to how we used to be. So let's prepare to have Black class, and I'm glad Mr. Cummings is encouraged, because I want us to be encouraged, because we are the bomb, as our young people say, or as we used to say when we was young.
Yeah, that's right. We are, and we need to know that. Yes.
And I got proof, and I prove it in my class. I mean, it's all over the place. You don't need me to see that we the bomb. I mean, Zakia already talked about how they, I don't want to start show part 2. Let me shut up. You can find me at the Amasi Center. That's amassi.org.
I posted it earlier. Yep. Let me just put it right here again. There we go. I made sure. And people, there's a donation link. So we know we have to financially support our own institutions. So while you're perusing the website, if you got it, I know them STEMI checks didn't hit, right? If you got it, show some love to our brother. He's doing amazing work. I am a witness. I have been to the center. It is real, right in the heart of Baltimore's Black community. And he's doing good work for our people there.
Also, people can purchase Value Black People t-shirts.
That's right.
Make that a new mantra. They're available in red, black, and green in terms of the colors.
Ooh, there we go.
And we also have some hats that say "Make Black People Woke Again," as opposed to the other ones that Donald Trump had. We have "Make Black America Woke Again" for real.
That's right.
So those are for sale. And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter. They just hacked my account, so I had to build a new one. They just took down my account of thousands of people that were on Twitter. They just got rid of it recently.
Wow, because I was looking for you on Twitter and couldn't find you.
Yeah, they just pardon me, they just took it down, and I had a lot of powerful people connected to that space.
Wow.
And I'm also on Instagram, so look me up, and I'm glad to engage my people. And thank you, Zakia, for inviting me. I love your show. I love how you are. I love your realness and your authenticity and your brilliance, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Brother, the pleasure is mine. You certainly always have some space on this platform. If you have any projects, anything that you and your team have coming up, you can always come here and share it with this audience. And it's all love. I appreciate you, brother, because you're doing positive things. You're not just talking about it, you walking the talk. And we need more of that in our community.
We do. All of us to be walking the walk. Not just me, all of you. You're doing it already, but we need even more. Jackie Chisholm, we need you to do it too. And thank you. And you too, Eric, and everybody else who's been hitting us up.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, brother. And thank you all so much for joining us. If you noticed, we moved from Thursdays to Wednesdays. So join us every Wednesday right here, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern, for Real Talk with ZSJ. As you all know, this is a quality content platform. I'm not talking about, drama and things that usually get the most views and all of that stuff. I'm bringing quality content because I want us to have conversations that we don't get in the mainstream, right? Things that are going to uplift our community, how we can learn and just support each other. That's what this platform is all about. And we do talk about the diversity of issues, from finances to, marriage and love. We hadn't covered that yet, but I am. All of those different kind of things. Black love is Black power to me. So anyway, thank you all for listening. We'll see you here next week, same place, same time. Thank y'all. Take care.